Okay, so Eric, maybe the thing will be to show like the workbench, and then to show what happens in Adalo and in Superset if people want to show that. I mean, not Adalo, sorry, in Superset and in Grafana, and in how the real-time piece of it can be done. So Brian, it means that, or anybody who wants to demo it can essentially demo it across all those elements because they're all kind of pre-configured. So this showcase app for Adalo, just tell me when you can see it. Can everybody see it? You see 4 images on the screen?
Yeah.
So what happens with the app is that it's got 3 recommenders, and Eric will show you now how that works. So what it does, I've already logged in with a user, and it went and found 4 different images. So in this case, if you could imagine, like when you go to like a Netflix or one of those kind of, service companies, and this image would be, any one of these would be a specific theme to say that there's something about, action or drama or whatever it might be. So that could be whatever the concept is that you want to present. What you then do is, and let's say that you select, one of these, and I'm going to pick this little forestry one. It then calls the next recommender, and in this case, it uses an emotional cue to pick, what a person would select next. So this sadness, fear, love could then be like a category of a genre. So it could be for anything that you want to. So in the banking world, it could be that it's a savings and a current or investment account. In a insurance, it could be life and short and something else. So it just means that there are different categories being presented based on the previous item that you've picked. And let's say we pick, one of those emotions. It then presents a movie to you, and you can say, well, yes, I like this, and if you do like it, you accept it. And at the back end, it then updates and takes you back to, where you kind of started. So if you pick a different one, and I click this refresh, you'll see what it'll do. It'll keep on picking. Now it says surprise, love, and joy. So it picks different emotions in this example. So let's say I want something to do with surprise. And every time that you present it with something, you can come back here, the wonderful world of golf. Okay, now let's re-recommend that. Okay, the village looks like fun. So you're going to pick what you like, but you can keep on requesting new things, and it will then learn from your preferences as you select what you select. So this could have been Pinterest or Spotify or any one of those companies. It follows a similar kind of construct. So you can clearly see how you can build then contextual recommenders to help you find the best options for that segment or that group of people that are engaging with you. So the other thing that we've been working on, Eric probably showed now as well, is that we've been working on a lot of documentation to help people make sense of all of this. So to document how it all fits.
When you are doing that sort of demonstration, you can also use Grafana to show people what's happening with the system and it's happening in real time. As Jay's interacting with this recommender, it's coming through here, so you can see what's being recommended, what he's selecting, more detail here. So this is recommending the emotions after the movies, and then you can see the movies one as well. So you can go through all 3, so we can see these are the movies that Jay accepted, these are the ones that he rejected, this is when it happened, etc., etc. And then you can show, if you run a simulation of people using it, then you can collect a lot more data ticking by over time. But this is where people will be able to see like what has been recommended overall, what scores did it get, how fast were the responses, etc., etc. Like Jay was saying, there's also just a document that walks you through it. So if you go to get started, you go through this. if you go here, it will show you all of the steps that you need to take. Well, there's a bit of preamble about what you're going to be doing to set up these recommenders and like issues it solves, and then like step by step how to do it with little pictures. So, log in, you'll see your projects. You can add a new project or edit an existing one. You add data on these screens in this way, and kind of walks through the whole process up until deploying and then viewing the dashboards and testing. So yeah, this is what it could look like if more activity on the dashboard. And then also down to viewing the results, like analyzing the results in Superset. So that's kind of just a useful resource for people learning to use it, or if you want to give a demo, you can just kind of basically follow this document outline.
But there's also documentation now added onto the main website. So if you go under resources documentation, you guys will see that there's a kind of like a list of docs now added there.
Yeah, so it's actually in both places. Yeah, thanks. That's good. So yeah, it's probably an easier way of getting to it. For getting started. And then you'll be able to see all the same content, and this has the added functionality of navigating around the table of contents. So if you're struggling with a specific piece, you can more easily find out where that is. The first part is setting up the project.
Eric, sorry, just before you do that, sorry, man, just quickly tell everybody quickly what happened at the top there. You'll see that there's that little banner at the top now that shows you your whole ecosystem and all the technologies that you have access to when you get the SaaS version spun up. So you'll see that it's got, the workbench, and then it's got the different dashboards, including one runtime engine that you got access to there. From there, the rest of it you probably just can access directly, and as well as the prediction server if you want to go look at the API. So that's got the notebooks and everything accessible directly from there. So it just makes it easier when you click on it, it'll then go and open up other parts of your project. And then the stats that you see at the top there over time will be updated with different things depending on what people want to see at the top of that screen. So here's this shows you got 13 projects, 4 feature stores, 2 predictors, and 7 dynamic configurations.
If you want to set up a new project, you can, but it's a similar process to, you would click add a project here, but basically you just kind of populate some of the details, the basic details and descriptions if you want to, and then you link data to that. So I'm not going to go through uploading and ingesting a CSV file, but if you just click on the Files tab, you can upload whatever data, and that will then be available in the system. To actually set up your recommender and configure it and tell it what to do. So here you can see the 3 recommenders Jay was talking about. The first one showing you an image, then showing you an emotion based on that image, and then a movie based on the image and emotion. So, and again, there's detail on like describing all of these fields and stuff in the documentation. But all you would do is go and give it a name and a definition. Then you link the data that you uploaded here, and you give it a place to store the actual configuration that you're setting up, or the part of the information and the configuration that you're setting up here. And then there's a little wizard that you go through to set up the next set of parameters. So asking things like, are you going to use historical data? Would you just have sort of like a list of offers? If you do say, yeah, expands out what sort of behavior you're expecting in terms of like successful versus unsuccessful interactions. How quickly do you want your learning to converge? How much history do you want to use when you're doing this learning? So, you want to use the last hour of data, or all the data available, or the last 100 interactions. All of that is configurable, and how do you want repeated interactions from the same person to be handled? So like, should you only look at the last interaction from each person, or all of them, or a specific number, etc. And you generate that set of parameters. The next piece is then just telling us what the columns in the data set you uploaded are representing. So, yeah.
Sorry, Eric, now quickly, just for Sarah's sake, just on that engagement setting and so on, what happens is that if you think of the normal process people would go through to construct experiments themselves and having to code for all these options that you would normally need to do these tests end to end, they're all available. And we will keep on refining this kind of usability wizard style so people can configure what it is that they want to test or what they want to make dynamic. So I think that as part of that story of, why do you need it? Is it on the one end, experimentation has got a philosophy of why people want to try different options. And the obstacle, or one of the obstacles at least, that people normally experience is this technical complexity of getting it implemented and having it available in production and dealing with all of the options that you can test, because it just takes so long and it's so expensive to do. So you need this as kind of like a big part of making it work economically.
And there's also, Sarah, for you, like I'm refining some of the wording in these and writing out some examples and stuff, but I spent quite a lot of time with her explaining the different questions and things, so she should be able to help with that. So like I said, the next part is what columns did you actually include in your data that you uploaded. You can populate this list of all of the fields in your data, and then you tell us, the only kind of compulsory one is what is the name of the thing that you're wanting to actually recommend. So in this case, it's an emotion. That's the only compulsory field. Everything else is optional. Do you have a historical take-up field? In this case, we do put take-up. Do you want to track at a customer level? In this case, we're not. And do you want to include any context? In this case, we're including the image just selected. So based on this image that you choose here, we will recommend an emoji taking into account this historical information. You can include a second piece of context. In this one, we're not doing that, but in the one that's recommending a movie, we use the image and the emotion. So you can see we can just leave some of these blank if you want to. Once you've set that all up, you would generate, and that will then take you to this tab, which shows all of the options that are going to be tested in your experiment with the different segments. So for the image road 4, we're going to have anger, and if you want to see all of the images that you would test, which road, all of the emotions, sorry, that you would recommend for someone who selected the 4th road picture, you can see them here, as well as some information about like parameters in the experiment. And that is setting up the config. So once you've done that, all that you need to do is deploy it. So to do that, you go to deployment, you select the project that you set up, that's our showcase, and you would add a deployment. In this case, we'll look at the emotions one. Again, you give it a name and a description and a type, and say why you're doing it. Think it's keeping track of everything that you're doing. And you also give it a version, and then say like where you're wanting to do this deployment to. So you're still in your sandbox phase, you want to do like QA testing, you're in production, or you actually just want to turn this off completely. And then you sort of document your performance expectation and what you think the complexity is, and set up your, in this case, this kind of additional functionality. The one is new knowledge, and this is just where you link that configuration that we set up. And the second is plugins, just to tell the runtime or the client pulse responder like what sort of recommender you are deploying to it. The settings tab is like available, but it should, especially in a SaaS case, it's all pre-populated with the right sort of databases to use and where the logging is done and everything. So you don't actually need to do anything there. All that you really need to do is choose platform dynamic engagement. That's how you do that's the name of the dynamic experimentation, dynamic recommender functionality. And then here you will link your configuration that you set up. And you do that just by specifying the UID that is automatically created and assigned to that configuration, which you can see here. So this, what you need to do is copy this UID. It gets created for you. And it will then just validate it as well and check that this is you showing recommend emotions based on images, which is what we wanted to do here. And then you would update that and click push, and then your recommender is deployed to the environment that you've selected here. You can then go and do single calls to that recommender that you, just to check that it's working as expected. So if we go to emotions, you can set up kind of name of the call that you want to test, where you want it to call to, and we've saved a range of different tests. So you don't have to kind of constantly retype stuff, and then you can execute and you can see the result of a single call. So you can see the offer. The offer in this case is the emotion that it's recommending. This is the score. This is the most highly ranked offer. The next one is love. Scores going down, etc., etc. So you can specify how many results you want to be returned from the total ranked list. That's working as you want. You can then run that's sort of a bigger simulation. So instead of just doing one call, like simulate a lot of different calls to the recommender. That's the one piece we're still building up the workbench input for it. At the moment, you can just API call with the simulation parameters configured. I wonder if I still have it.
Yeah, so in the next workbench, I think next 3 or 4 releases or so over the next week, there will be hopefully a UI created for you to set up your simulation and track your performance of your recommender or experiment directly from the workbench.
Yeah, so it's got things like how many calls do you want to do per second, etc., etc.
Eric, let me just note for everybody as well is that what it does, it basically simulates a real-time call where that call could have come from, some client having it in, the outbound client-based system or in a call center or it is. So the parameters help you to configure what its real-life situation could be, so that you could just get a feel for how it will be used in the context of a real time, and then you can set the parameters to see how the calls will then be made for the acceptance rate as well.
So basically to simulate your actual production environment, one just with the number of calls, but also with kind of user behavior. And you can say, do you want people's behavior to shift over time? Do you want to just look at a specific segment, etc., etc.? And you can execute that. So this is an old config. So I have the right param saved somewhere, but this will then run a sort of a loop of people interacting with your runtime, which you can then view in your Grafana dashboard and see, like, is it converging like you would expect to? Is the learning rate what you would expect it to be?